On today's show, the NBA Finals start tonight. We'll talk key matchups, X factors, and we'll make our picks. You know what time it is. Lace them up, lock in. JWJ.
Ladies and gentlemen, you know the voices sound familiar. We're back in the building. What is going on? This is your boy James, and I am here, one half of JWJ, with my dude, my shooter on the wing, Mr. Shane. How's it going, brother?
What's good, my boy?
Staying out the way.
No, for real.
we here, man. This feels weird, bro. It's been, look, I'm gonna get rid of that catchphrase of saying way too freaking long because I'm getting kind of tired of saying it. It's been a minute, man, but hopefully things will pick up now, man. The school year is over, got a lot more free time in the day.
Y'all about to hear a lot more of us. I hope y'all ready.
Listen. If y'all thought y'all were tired of us before, which you probably weren't because we haven't been here, let me flip that and say, I know y'all missed us and you're about to get your fix. So we're here. We're back.
First order of business, ladies and gentlemen, it is so good to be back. We're about to talk about the NBA Finals tonight. Number 1 seed Denver Nuggets, number 8 seed Miami Heat. Tonight, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. You know where to find it on ABC. So that being said, man, we're going to get right into it. Obviously, we know Denver got to they got through the Western Conference Finals. I'm not going to mention how it went because we know.
You know what?
And
hey, quick break. I don't have a problem mentioning it, and I want to do this because all of my social media folks that suddenly have stuff to say that only watched about 15 minutes of basketball all year, here I am. As the biggest diehard Laker fan you will probably ever meet, yo, we got dragged, we got embarrassed. But guess what? I got some things I want to point out real quick. Started the season 2-10, and we were given less than a 1% chance of even making the playoffs. And not only do we make the playoffs, we end up the 7th seed. And before we got to Denver in the conference finals, mind you, we weren't supposed to make the postseason at all. We got to the postseason by knocking off the defending champs. So y'all can say what y'all want to say, but this Laker fan right here is standing tall, standing proud. Yeah, we didn't win a ring. No real fan is going to be satisfied falling short of a title. But guess what? Everybody wants to come out and say, oh, LeBron this and LeBron that. Why y'all ignoring the fact this man is 38 years old and played all 48 minutes and dropped 40, almost a triple double in the elimination game for them? This dude came to play, but as soon as something goes wrong, something goes south, everybody wants to be like, oh, LeBron. But when the team wins, his name is the last one you mention. All y'all little haters out here that always want to throw shade at LeBron, y'all better make sure that y'all save up y'all's tears because y'all are going to miss not having anybody to crack on once that dude finally hangs it up.
Yeah, it's gonna be like collective misery for everybody. Like Skip Bayless might as well retire unless he finds somebody new to pick on. Shannon Sharp already leaving Fox.
Listen.
So yeah, so we just need to go ahead and cherish the last little bit that we get a LeBron, however long that may be.
And I gotta
wild postseason.
I gotta throw one more thing in there because this is hilarious, and this is another shout out to all of these random fake fans around the world. Anybody that is listening to this, I gotta point out something that's hilarious but also annoys the crap out of me. So I was listening to NBA radio the other day after those green guys got put out. Screw them too. And if you listen to NBA radio, you'll see that there's a show on there called Starting Lineup. Starting Lineup comes on at 7. They replay it at 10, Monday through Friday. The hosts are Frank Isola and former Boston Celtic, former champion with the Boston Celtics, Brian Scalabrine. Now, Scal did something on the radio the other day that I have to call out every single fake fan on. Nothing annoys me more than when fans choose selective ownership of a team. And what I mean by that is throughout this entire postseason, every single time Boston won a game, I would listen to the radio and you have Scal on here talking about, yeah, man, I can't really do his voice. His voice gets on my nerves. But he's like, yeah. So what we did really well last night is, we did this and da 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 da, bro. When was the last time you played for Boston? Like, I get it. But after they got put out the other day, I listened to the entire broadcast twice just to make sure that I was hearing it right. He did not mention the pronoun we a single time. Every single time he talked about the Celtics, it's like, oh, well, you know what they should have done better. The Boston Celtics, suddenly it's not we anymore. Stick with your squad. Guess what? My Lakers, we got embarrassed in the conference finals. We could not put a body on Nikola Jokic. Am I a Laker? Do I suit up? No. But as a fan, I have always identified as we. My dad used to tease me about that all the time, but I've always done it. And that's one thing that is not going to change. I'm not going to sit here and all of a sudden it's them now because they're performing poorly. No, that's my squad. It's been my squad well over 20 years. I pretty much started watching the Lakers in, I'm going to say 97 when I moved to Vegas. It's never going to change. That's we, that's us. That's my squad, and I will rock it to the end.
Yeah. Now, with that, what's funny is that, this started with the Lakers, so this kind of keeps up with the media narrative.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about Denver.
I know, right? Sorry, Coach Malone,
Denver.
my bad.
So in this series with the Miami Heat, again, they start tonight, 8:30. In the regular season, Denver swept that series 2-0. They beat Miami 124-119 back on December 30th, and then they played again day before Valentine's Day, and they got a 4-point win over the Heat then. Not too much to look into that. Neither team really had their full complement of players in either game. Plus, it's only a 2-game sample size. But with that, we have to talk about, what we're looking at with these teams. Obviously, Denver's a high-powered offense. I think they're 5th ranked in the league in offensive rating. Defensively, they're middle of the pack. Literally, they're 15th out of 30 teams in terms of defensive rating. Miami is completely leaned on their defense all year. They're 9th ranked defense, but they're 25th ranked offense in the entire NBA. So, going into this, man, like with the key matchups I'm looking at, obviously you got to think about how does nobody's been able to solve this quandary all year is how do you match up with and how do you slow down Nikola Jokic? Now, one matchup I've pointed to that I think is the most important in this series is the Jokic-Bam Adebayo matchup. And so far, in those 2 games that they played, so the December 30th game head-to-head, Jokic had a triple-double. He had 19, 12, and 12. Bam had 22, 7 with 4 steals.
So in other words, Jokic was awake. Go ahead.
Right. And so the next game, Jokic had a bigger game. He had 27, 12 with 8 assists, and he shot 12 of 14 from the field. Bam had 19 points, but he didn't really do anything else, really. He had 2 rebounds, 2 steals in that game that Denver won. So Bam has said, he wants to be looked at as a top defender. Felt like he should have got some Defensive Player of the Year love, that kind of stuff. He's about to have that put to the test because I think he's going to be the primary guy that they throw at Nikola Jokic. And Bam does some things that, he's not a shot blocker, but he's a guy that can move his feet and contest shots, and he's a good rebounder. So, I'm interested to see how it happens. I think Jokic, we've talked about this off air a bunch of times that Nikola Jokic is like, he's not he's the perfect mix of an old school big man and the modern big man, because he does everything offensively. And everybody talks about his defense, and I heard them talking about this on the Dan Patrick show this morning. Everybody talks about Nikola Jokic's defense, but he's one of the best defensive rebounders in the game. So, you know, he may not be a great man-on-man defender, but he's beating guys to the ball to get stops. That's how stops end, with defensive rebounds. Looking at you, Dallas. But anyway, so, you know, with Jokic, you know, there's nothing he can't do. He's big enough to post. He's so strong, but he's got a soft touch in the paint. Everybody knows he can shoot the ball from the outside, and he's a wonderful passer. And Bam's going to have his hands full. I mean, he hasn't really, you know, he kind of went toe-to-toe in the first matchup, and then, you know, Jokic decidedly took that matchup in both games they played. So that matchup, I think, is key. After that, the next most important matchup, I think, and I'm sure James will agree, is the Jimmy Butler Jamal Murray matchup.
Well, quickly before we get into them,
yeah,
where I think the problem is going to come in, and where I think Denver has a slight edge when it comes to the Jokic and Bam scenario, is okay. So Bam says he wants to be that guy. He wants to be looked at as that defensive guy. But one of the major reasons that the last series against Boston had to go 7 games is because they were exposing Bam defensively. And when he was being taken too far out of the paint, he really became ineffective as far as on the defensive end. I mean, offensively, I want to say he almost averaged a double-double for the series. But when you take him away from the basket, he's in trouble defensively. I mean, Jokic isn't very quick on his feet. We know that. But again, neither is Bam. But the problem is if anything goes wrong with Bam as far as foul trouble or anything like that, who are you going to put out there behind him? Kevin Love? You
Cody
really
Zeller.
like, I feel like when it comes to that front line in Miami, their front line is really thin. And I think that's going to be one of the things that Denver is definitely going to take advantage of, because Denver is a team that likes to shoot. Denver doesn't spend a lot of time around the basket. So they're going to draw the defense out. And I think that immediately creates a weakness for a guy like Bam.
Right. And that's, you know, he has to kind of be like the anchor on that defense. I mean, obviously they have Jimmy. Kyle Lowry's a solid defender, but, you know, other than that, I mean, that's the best defenders, is basically their backcourt and the one big.
Right. And that's what I was going to say. I mean, they have those guys, but at what point, if I'm Spoelstra, am I going to look at Kyle Lowry and be like, hey, go out there and mess with Joker? Like, there's too many inconsistencies on the rosters, and I don't feel like there's really going to be anybody that's going to be able to help Adebayo when it comes to trying to stop Joker. And if he gets in any foul trouble, I feel like Miami is sunk.
Yeah. And the thing I want to know, I'm interested to see if they, like, what kind of tinkering does Eric Spoelstra go with to try and slow him down? Are they going to say, okay, that's Bam's matchup, or are they going to send doubles? Like, are they going to try like other guys and then let Bam roam? I don't know if they have the personnel for that.
And that's what I was going to say. To me, doubles, if you've been paying any attention to Denver this season, throwing doubles at them, look, we learned the hard way. Notice I said we again. Yeah, y'all know who I'm talking about. So doubles are not smart when it comes to Denver, because Denver is they're a team that has a lot of shooters, and they're very streaky shooters. I immediately think of guys like Peja. Like, their whole team is very streaky. You mess around and let a guy like Jamal Murray get hot. You let Michael Porter get hot. Even Aaron Gordon has had his moments in the postseason. You let those guys, KCP, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, you let those guys get hot and get going, it's going to take a lot to stop them. And if you double Jokic, that is what is going to be the catalyst that's going to start those guys going off. So to me, if I'm Spoelstra, I can't afford to double Jokic, because I have to isolate him, and I also got to make sure there's always a body on these other shooters around him, especially when he's so smart with the ball. Right.
And you know, that takes me right to the next point. I mean, with we talking defense versus offense in this matchup is we're looking at the Jimmy Butler, Jamal Murray matchup. I think Jimmy will probably be the primary defender there if they don't go
Has
with
to be.
Kyle Lowry in that situation. I feel
No,
like those are the two guys they have to go with on him.
it has to be Jimmy. To me, it's
It has to be
if
Jimmy.
you if
Yeah,
you
of course.
if you look over the course of the postseason for Miami, Jimmy Butler by far has been their most consistent and most reliable defender. And that's across all 5 positions. And anybody that he's locked in on has struggled. So it's Jimmy Butler is going to be given the Jamal Murray matchup. Now that may switch depending on, does a guy like KCP get hot? You know, does a guy like Michael Porter start knocking down some jumpers? Like, they might move him around, but that's the reason you're able to move him around, is because he is by far Miami's most reliable defender.
Right. And see, that's the issue that you could possibly run into, because Jimmy has had to play a lot of minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And as the team's best player, he always takes that challenge of trying to guard the best player on the other team. Now, you know, in the 2 games they played, like Jamal Murray only played one of the 2.
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy played both games, but the first matchup, Jimmy had 17, 8, 6 rebounds, 4 steals.
Mm-hmm.
Jamal Murray had 14 points and 6 assists, but he only took 9 shots the whole night. I don't know, like, obviously I don't have the game in front of me.
Yeah.
But Jamal Murray only getting 9 shots, that's kind of interesting. I don't know how much Jimmy spent on him. I'm assuming it's a lot. I don't have that in front of me, but you know, that's a matchup I'm interested to see, because Jamal had at least 2 37-point games in the conference final that I know of.
Yeah.
And if he's gonna be attacking the basket and slashing and hitting, you know, 4, 5, 6 threes every night, it's gonna be interesting to see, because Jimmy's that guy that, you know, if you have some fires on the perimeter, he's the guy that you would throw around to kind of put those out. So is Jimmy gonna have enough? It's already kind of an offensively challenged team in a way. Mm-hmm. Like, is that gonna be a team that can afford to have their best player kind of overexert himself defensively if like, say, like a guy like Murray is giving him hell? Like, who knows? I think that matchup is key, just the same as Jokic and Bam. And then, you know, obviously after you get to that, I think the biggest matchup is the 2 coaches, Michael Malone and Erik Spoelstra.
By far. And
I think this one's going to be fun, because I think it's a chess match. I really think it's going to be a chess match.
I'm really interested to see what's going to happen. This is one time where, if you take the players on the court away, I feel myself 100% leaning the way of Erik Spoelstra. I mean, this is in no way any sort of shade or a knock on Malone, but one of these guys is finals tested in charge. One of them has hoisted trophies. So I think that on this big stage, I mean, you have to look Erik Spoelstra's way. Another thing is, I feel like when it comes down to just schemes and the way that these guys plan, I feel like Erik Spoelstra is another one that's just not afraid to make changes on the fly and do what needs to be done. Not to say that Malone doesn't do that, but I think that Spoelstra is already in a position where like I said, he's been here before, he's done these things, and he's seen teams like this. Let's look at how long this dude has spent in Miami and how long he spent just paying attention to these things. Again, none of this I'm saying is a knock on Mike Malone, because we know how solid of a coach he is as well. But I just feel like when it comes down to strictly coaching, Spoelstra is ready for that moment. Like, he thrives on stuff like this. I think that if you take team records out of it this season, I like just coaches in general. Of course, I'm still going to say that Greg Popovich is probably the greatest coach in the NBA right now. I would easily put Erik Spoelstra at number 2. I won't hesitate to say that. I think he is one of the best coaches in the NBA, and I think that's about to show starting tonight.
Right, and like you said, I mean, it's I think, as far as a tactician, I think Erik Spoelstra probably doesn't get enough credit, as far as just being a genius, as far as knowing how to get the most out of matchups, knowing which guys to attack, that kind of thing. He's always been really good at getting the guys motivated and ready to play. I think the funny thing about these two teams is one team, like both teams they kind of shy away from being favored. Like Denver, they asked Nikola Jokic if he like who's the favorite in the series, and I'm like, that's kind of a dumb question, but I'll roll with it. So they asked him like who's to be favored, and he's like, are we favorites? I don't know. They didn't pick us to beat the Lakers, and all they could talk about was the Lakers, and they couldn't do something. Like he kept saying, like, we're not the favorites. That like we haven't been picked in any series or whatever it is, and obviously with Miami, they've been the underdog that's made it this far. So I think you got one team that feels kind of like disrespected and kind of like ignored, and then you got the other team that's like, look, like, doubt us at your own peril, because we're ready to do what we got to do. I mean, I think the two of these teams, one team has a chip on their shoulder. I feel like the other team is trying to manufacture a chip, because I mean,
Right.
Denver's been very good all year, and it's like yeah, like it's because nobody really gets to see Denver, on TV a whole lot. Like they know about Nikola Jokic, but he's not a flashy superstar type. So he's basically getting, he probably should have won MVP, didn't get it. So it's like, okay, like they're basically like turning into like Michael Jordan from The Last Dance. Like they want to take everything personally. Like they're
It's
basically
funny.
trying to manufacture like something to get that chip on their shoulder. When I'm like, okay, like you should win this series. You
It's,
should.
yeah, it's funny. It's funny you mentioned, the MVPs and everything. That was something else funny that I heard on the radio that I wanted to mention to you. They were like, so if, hypothetically, if Denver was to win the ring, within the next week and a half or whatever, it would follow I guess you could say it would start a trend, because it'd only be like a back-to-back thing. But they said, if you look at it, you go back 3 years, Giannis wins MVP, Giannis wins a back-to-back MVP. The third year when Giannis does not win the MVP is when he wins the title and wins finals MVP. And they're like, the following 3 years, same thing with Jokic. He wins MVP, wins back-to-back MVPs,
Right.
doesn't win the MVP this year. Let's wait and see what happens. And then the guy on the radio was like, hey, man, if that trend continues, I'm going to go ahead and say congrats to Joel Embiid in 2 years.
But given that it's this year, Denver's gonna win the series. They're gonna give the trophy to the Lakers. So let Denver tell it. That's probably what's gonna happen. So I'm looking forward to seeing LeBron hoist his fifth, even though it's Denver's first. But anyway, like going from that, man, like obviously these are the two teams left standing. There's great stories on both sides. I mean, Denver, I don't think anybody believed in them because they've had some kind of playoff flameouts in recent years, but they haven't always been this healthy. I think they're in a stage now where they feel like they still have to prove themselves. And I mean, on this stage, they kind of do. They've never been here before.
Right.
Miami, they've been to the finals here recently, been to, deep in the playoffs recently. So they're trying to basically finish the job that they started back in the bubble when they made the run, and they're 8 seed here. I think they're only the second 8 seed to ever make the NBA finals. So, both teams, like I said, one team has a chip on their shoulder for sure, because they're full of guys that, other teams maybe didn't want, and they've been able to get the most out of them. And Denver just, they're trying to basically pump themselves up, and kind of take the whole y'all don't respect us and all that. So, I think ultimately it's just going to come down to who has better players. I think on paper, Denver is the more talented team. I think they're deeper. I think they have more talent top to bottom, and they have the best player in the series in Nikola Jokic. So I think as far as X's and O's, I think it definitely favors Denver. I think also in terms of the Jimmys and Joes, it favors Denver. But as we've seen, you can't count out Miami because they just put out a 1 seed, and Boston just kind of laid down and died. And I mean, even though they made a run to get it to game 7, they couldn't finish the job. So, Miami has proven that they got that dog in them, and they're not about to just like, go into this thing. They're going to be prepared. It's an Eric Spoelstra team. They will always be prepared for anything that anything that's being thrown at them. So I'm thinking like it's going to be a tight series. It could go 6 or 7 for sure. But before we even get to that, I mean, we got to look at like guys that will turn it. Last series, on both sides, I think it was Kentavious Caldwell Pope in the Lakers series. He hit a lot of threes. I think on the Boston side,
the irony that he's doing that against his former team that he won a title with. But go ahead,
and probably should have stayed on there. But that's a whole different.
Yeah,
we for another day.
I was about to say we've already done too much of straying this to LA. We're totally being the media right now. Let's go. We'll get back to we'll get back.
Right. So like I think, we've seen guys step up in the series, in both conference finals. KCP against the Lakers, Caleb Martin most recently against the Celtics. And so, James, I got to ask you, like, who do you feel like on both sides are your X factors in this series, guys that could sway this one way or the other?
Ooh, okay. So I'm totally with you on the KCP with Denver. That's going to be huge for them. I've found myself looking more on the Miami side because I feel like Miami is going to need it much more. So follow me on this. I have a couple of I have my X factor, but then I also have like a random idea that I want to throw out there. Eric Spoelstra, if you're ever listening and you do decide to do this and it works, then I'll move to Miami for the right price. Just hook me up. Hook me up. All right. So to me, when it comes to Miami, as funny as this sounds, who our X factor is going to be is somebody that we actually haven't seen since the opening round, and that's going to be Tyler Hero. Recovering from a broken hand, there's been talks that he could be ready to go by game 3, which coincidentally, games 3 and 4 of this series will be in South Beach. So I think that is huge for Miami if he can actually suit up and play. Of course, there will be concerns over rust and fatigue and this and that because he hasn't played since the opening series against Milwaukee. But to me, Tyler Hero, he fits into that mold. Dude is a shooter. And shooters shoot. I mean, you look at guys that come back from injuries that are just pure shooters, Klay Thompson, Kevin Durant. I mean, it doesn't take them long to get that groove back going. Now, I'm not putting Tyler Hero on their level, but he plays that kind of game where I don't think it's going to take much for him to get back acclimated to what he needs to do to help the team. And the reason that I say he is the X factor is because of one of the other guys that you just mentioned in Caleb Martin. Now, Caleb Martin showed us in the last round, especially in game 7, just who the heck he is. I feel like a lot of people might not have really been aware, might not have been paying much attention to Caleb Martin. I mean, we didn't really hear his name too much when he was playing with his brother in Charlotte. He's really been
we don't hear much of anything from Charlotte.
Right. So we didn't hear much from him there. He gets to Miami, he's coming off the bench. We don't hear much from him in Miami. His coming out party was all because Tyler Hero got hurt. And if you pay attention to what he was doing during the regular season, it was in shorter spurts, but when he played well. So he has this coming out party in the conference finals. Back to why I say Tyler Hero is the X factor, because if Tyler gets out there, Tyler starts stroking, he starts knocking down shots, he gets back to being typical Tyler Hero. That takes one extra defender from Denver's side that's going to have to focus on him. And now Caleb Martin can possibly be open again. So you have to worry about both of these guys. And it's all going to start with Tyler Hero. Because of what Caleb did last round, Denver is going to focus on him anytime he's on the floor. But if you have him and Tyler out here at some point, you have a choice to make. And that just only helps on the offensive side for Miami. Defensively, not necessarily an X factor player, but an X factor decision. Here's one that I just thought about, Shane. earlier we were talking about Bam and the possible struggles of having to guard Jokic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here's one thing that I think that Eric Spoelstra should consider that could deepen their bench and possibly help defensively to start off the game. Start the game bigger. Leave Bam at the 5. Take Caleb Martin out of the starting lineup. Let him be your 6th man. Put Kevin Love in at the 4.
Mm-hmm.
You're making your front line bigger. That assures you that Jimmy can worry about Jamal Murray, and it brings extra firepower with Caleb Martin off the bench. And we don't know where we're going to insert Tyler Hero in this. So it improves you offensively, and I feel like it improves you defensively because now you also have the ability to, while Bam is on the floor, you can still possibly throw Kevin Love over there, which spares any possible foul trouble coming up with Bam. Because like I said earlier, Bam gets in foul trouble, you're done. you're sunk. So I would consider starting Kevin Love and letting Caleb Martin come off the bench.
Yeah, I think that's something they have to look at. I'm like, I think it would allow them to kind of play the way the Lakers played against Denver, where they said, okay, we found a matchup with Rui Hachimura and allowing AD to kind of stay out of foul trouble and kind of play free safety back there, protecting the paint. And it helps that Kevin Love, if he is, to be a factor in the series defensively, it'd be, he's a plus rebounder still. Even though he doesn't play as many minutes, he can still rebound. He throws those outlet passes. So that'll allow them to put some pressure on Denver in transition as well. And we already know that Denver is, kind of an average defensive team. So for me, as far as X factors, I agree with you that Tyler Hero, I mean, he went over 20 in a game against Miami. If he's back and he's able to play some meaningful minutes and he's not on any kind of restrictions, things like that, I'm interested to see just how well he shoots the ball, because that's one other guy that they would have to account for. And then on Denver's side, I'm kind of torn. I feel like I want to lean KCP again, but I feel like it'll be somebody else. I feel like this could be a series, for a Michael Porter or an Aaron Gordon to really put their stamp on it. I think if Michael Porter is a guy that, kind of taps into some of that star potential that we've seen in him, that might be difficult for Miami because, like I said, Denver's a high-powered offense, and you only have so many guys. So if Porter's a guy that can go off, or he's the one guy I think that can go off and score in bunches. I think if he's doing that along with Jokic and Murray doing their thing, that's going to be really tough for Miami to try and deal with. I mean, they'll devise a plan, but we'll see just how effective, those plays, go for them as far as, what are we going to do defensively? How do we respond to if this guy gets hot? And then what are the kind of tactical matchups and moves that they make within the series? So,
and I think another thing that's going to have to happen, like I said, we're already expecting to see Jimmy Butler on Jamal Murray. He's going to have to be in that man's jersey. You can't give him any space. I mean, Jamal Murray is the type of guy, he's most effective when he's able to put the ball down, when he's able to get his dribble going. You can't allow him space. Right. He's highly effective off screens, off picks. I mean, you have to stay up in him. You cannot give him any kind of room. And that's another reason, like we talked about already. I think that's why that's a huge matchup as well, because then you also have to consider, is there going to be foul trouble for Jimmy? Because he's really going to have to, I think he's going to have to press up on Jamal pretty much the entire game. Even if you give him the half court, you gotta lock in as soon as he gets there. You can't give him.
I think a key there is how they decide to deal with that dribble handoff action with Jokic and then Jamal, because that's a deadly play for them. That's a pet play for them to get him a quick shot, to get Jokic involved up in the high post. And that dribble handoff action, it can be tricky because you have to make sure, okay, like what am I guarding off of that? Like, am I going to go under and concede the shot, or am I
Right.
going to hound him and really press this and make them have to go somewhere else?
Yeah, I think going over. I mean, I think in most of those situations, if you're involving Jokic, I feel like going over is the smarter move,
Right.
because you're not going to see Jokic cutting to the basket that often. So if anything, Jamal is gonna, he'll come around and then they're gonna end up kicking it back out, which at least buys you some more time. Now, if this was another team, like say this was a healthy LA, you're not trying to go over too often because Anthony Davis has no problem cutting down and heading to the basket, but Jokic isn't that same guy. So
Right.
I think going
Jokic is more of a
over,
short roll threat.
right. I think going over is fine for Miami. Like I said, again, only because Jokic is not a slasher. He's not a cutter. You're not going to look for that from him. So you want to make sure that wherever he goes, you pay attention because you still got to get a body on him as soon as you go over to make
Right.
sure, because like I said, it only takes a split second for Jokic to find the open man.
Right. And how they guard that, and if they can blow up that dribble handoff action, which not many teams have been able to do, that's going to be key as far as the success they have defensively in the series, without a doubt. So,
Yeah.
with that being said, we've talked about matchups, we talked about X factors, we talked about the coaching matchup. So, might as well get that drum roll started.
Oh boy.
Get that drum roll started. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, before we make those picks, if you have made it this far, we want to thank you for making JWJ a part of your day. You know where to find us. We're on all the major podcast platforms. Like I said, you need to go ahead and, if you see us on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe. Give us a like. Hit that notification bell for more original content.
Show some love.
Show some love, because we haven't been able to record as regularly, but now that we've hit the summer, we got a lot more time on our hands, so you will be hearing more of us.
Yes.
And if you've rocked with us this long, we appreciate you. If you're new to it, we urge you to go back, listen to previous episodes, because we're coming up on our anniversary.
We got it. I was gonna say we gotta hit them with the JWJ episode at some point. We've been promising that for months.
Yeah. So we're 21, we're 21 or so episodes in, and I'm sure y'all want to know what the hell is JWJ. So we're gonna get around to that. I'm sure if y'all have been listening to us, you probably already know kind of what it is.
Nostalgia.
But, we're gonna kind of give y'all kind of a glimpse into why this podcast has come about, why we're doing this, why like it's us and not maybe somebody else, why we're doing this as best friends and guys that met each other through ball, through having classes in school. So y'all need to stay tuned for that.
And also don't forget also meeting each other because we're both shy ass introverts.
Right. So it was
Stay
a
tuned,
complete like by chance situation.
Stay tuned,
we can't wait to tell y'all the story. So be prepared to learn more about us and what makes us tick and what makes us so tight as friends. But jumping back in, tonight we get game 1. I'm gonna make a prediction for the series. James, I'm gonna throw it to you first. Miami, Denver, NBA Finals. Who you got, man? How many games?
Jesus. Oh man. Listen, dude, oh my goodness. I'm pretty much thinking right now, just the way that everything else has been going. The only point where I've really been spot on with anything, I was almost right 100% with the first round. And after that, I haven't been able to hit water out of a boat.
I ain't even gonna talk about mine anyway.
So I hate to do this because it has been such a run. Man, dude, this is so tough. It honestly is. Like,
it's only tough because we don't want to be wrong.
It's one of those. I know it's one of those. it's one of those mind versus gut right now. I'm just deciding which one I want to actually go with. I okay. I'm gonna stick with my gut. Shane, I'm taking what I feel is the true underdog story, and I think Miami is gonna win this series.
Okay.
I think Miami's gonna win the series. That's what I
Going
told
out
you
on a
on
limb.
that's what I told you on the phone yesterday. I was tempted to change my mind, but no, I'm sticking to my guns. I've bet against Miami every single round so far. And every single round, Miami has been like, why? Like, I wish you would do it again. I'm gonna stick with Miami this time, Shane. I think, and to me, there's gonna be two big things that matter in order for it to happen. One, I mean, granted, they're the lower seed, so this is gonna have to happen anyway. They're gonna have to shine in Denver, which we've seen is very difficult for teams to do. Their performance on the road is going to be tremendous in them taking this all the way. But we've talked about X factors. We've talked about all these other factors that fall into it. To me, the number one factor that's going to determine this series is going to be Eric Spoelstra. That to me is the reason why I'm so tempted to lean Miami. I'm gonna go Miami, Shane, and
How many games?
I, I'm gonna take the cliche 6 because I feel like they're definitely not gonna sweep them. It's not gonna be a 5-game series, and if it goes 7, Denver's winning because game 7 after this long series, after this long postseason and mile high, Denver is winning that hands down. So to me, 6 is the safe option. To me, it's also the most logical. I'm gonna say Miami in 6.
I'm I don't know. We talked about it yesterday. I feel like the magic is going to run out for Miami. I do. I just think at the end of the day, like firepower does matter. And I feel like Denver to me, them beating the Lakers in the way they did, and there was a lot of pressure in that series because you're going against LeBron, who's arguably the greatest playoff performer we've ever seen,
Mm-hmm.
and AD, who was having a great series, even though it was like every other game that he was dominating. But
Yeah.
like, there's a lot of pressure in that series to not choke. And Denver has been known to just cough it up. You know, they've been favored in series and not won. So I look at this and I think that firepower matters. I think them getting past LA in the way they got past LA, and it wasn't anything flashy. They just said, well, we got Nikola Jokic and you don't. So, you know, eventually other guys arrived to that party and were able to put Denver over the top. Now, I mean, a lot of people say, you know, the Lakers got embarrassed, whatever. That was a competitive series. Those
Yeah.
games were tight. You
Mm.
know, those were games where like the
It was
Lakers, you know,
totally
always been kind of a second half team, but you know,
it
those
was
games were
it was
tight.
totally it was totally a series of runs. Now it's funny. I look at the Lakers. Well, look, I look at let me fix that so nobody comes in here trying to check me. I look at my squad totally different. um, what annoys me the most about the Lakers is I feel like we're never a second half team. I feel like we've had such a problem over the last few years of blowing leads. And that's something that definitely showed, especially in those last couple of games against Denver, is we would come out to leads. We would get solid leads, but we could never hold on to them.
Yeah.
So that I don't know. It's uh, I I think what it is for me, I think the postseason has been very long for both of them.
Right.
Um, but another interesting thing I want to throw out there that has me wondering a little bit about what it's gonna look like in just in the long run for these teams. So I heard, you know me, I love my, random stats or whatever. I heard another interesting stat online today, or on the radio rather. So Denver has been sitting around waiting for, the Eastern Conference Finals to finish for, I think it's like 9 days, right?
Right.
They said that is the second longest wait span for a conference champion in NBA history. Do you know what the longest span was? You would have to look back. You'd have to look back quite a while. Neither one of us was alive. All right. So in 1982, all the way back in 1982, the Lakers preparing to play the Philadelphia 76ers, they had a wait of 12 days after sweeping the Spurs in the Western Finals. The Sixers ended up having to play a 7-game series. Ironically, Shane, they beat Boston in 7.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Lakers ended up taking the title that year in 6 games. Yeah. So I'm wondering, I'm interested to see also from Denver's standpoint. I say, for one, it's a good thing they have home court, because
massive advantage.
I think if it was the other way around and they had such a long wait, this would play so much more into Miami's favor.
Right.
But because they're starting in Mile High, I feel like that 9-day gap isn't going to play too much into it. But I'm interested to see if that's anything that also, I want to see just how fresh, or if Denver comes out and possibly looks like they've had a little too much time off.
Yeah, and I think another key, and this is before I give my prediction. I think another key that we didn't discuss is the 3-point shooting. I think both teams, they're two of the best 3-point shooting teams left.
Mm-hmm.
Miami, even though they're not a high-powered offense, they can make threes.
Right.
They've been a good percentage 3-point shooting team these last few years, while also being a top 10 defense. So Denver, they're probably a little bit more streaky as far as their shooting, but if they get hot, it's gonna be a long series. I think, honestly, Miami's gonna have a puncher's chance, just because they're going to battle you, and they're going to be prepared. I don't think they're going to be caught off guard by anything in this series.
Mm-hmm.
I just think Denver, given what they had to go through last series, given this is a chance for them to prove themselves, and they've gotten that chip on their shoulder as far as wanting their respect, and this is the only way that you do it. You want respect, you go win. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what's going to happen in this series. I've been wrong, and I'm not afraid to be wrong here. I think Denver wins this series. They win their first NBA championship, and I think they do it. I think they win this one I think Denver in 6. Okay. I wanted to say 5, but I didn't want to disrespect Miami entirely. Yeah. I think because those games have been so tight in the couple games they played, and now they're both healthy, I think those games will be tight, and it's going to go either way. That's why I think it's a 6-game series, and I think Denver wins. I think Nikola Jokic wins the Finals MVP, and
on my side, if that does happen, I feel like it's going to hands down be Jimmy Butler. I don't think there's going to be anybody else on Miami's side that's going to surprise us that much. I know we had our talks during the last round about like the whole Boston Miami thing and talking about conference finals MVPs.
Caleb Martin was robbed, but okay.
Oh, no. Oh, speaking of robbed, did you hear the whole thing about Reggie Miller?
No.
So during the closeout game, Reggie Miller was on the broadcast, and during the game, Reggie Miller is out there saying, "Oh, Caleb Martin working on that Finals MVP and da-da-da-da-da, and he's hands down." And then when it came down to the voting, Reggie didn't even vote for him. I'm like, come on, bro. Like,
come on, Reggie, you gonna do the Spike Lee pose on yourself?
Come on,
Reggie.
Like he sat there saying, "Oh, Reggie, this man is this man is your Finals MVP. This is your conference Finals MVP." And then I think he
realized he was a prisoner of the moment.
Yes, and then I think only like one person voted for Caleb, and it wasn't him.
Right.
Like come on, man. Like, but look, another random. Like I said, so Miami takes it. Jimmy Butler is absolutely going to be Finals MVP, because what he's done since, I'll say maybe like March or April, has been outstanding. Now, another thing that I want to point out, and this is also kind of moving my bias on the Miami side with my vote. I love seeing history happen. You know, sure, this will be Denver's first time getting it too. Okay, cool. But I would love the rarity of seeing one, this would be the first time that a play-in team would ever win a title.
Right.
And two, we've only had one other 8 seed make the finals. The Knicks in 99 were the only other 8 seed that made it to the finals, and they ended up getting embarrassed by the Spurs. But I mean, come on now. Tim Duncan, David Robinson, you know, Avery Johnson with the basketball. That's totally different. But I would also love to see that kind of history made to where we can say that, you know, everybody that's like, oh, the play-in is whack, it's stupid, it's this, it's that. Like, technically, if you look at the end of the regular season, Miami was supposed to be the 7th seed.
Right.
But they lost that first play-in game, so they got knocked down to 8. Now, even with getting knocked down, they still came in and they've knocked off, if they were to beat Denver, they would beat, I want to say record-wise, they would end up going through the top 3 teams record-wise this season in the NBA.
Right.
In Denver, Milwaukee, and Boston. They would have beaten, you know, no disrespect to y'all, you know, New York, but whatever. Y'all let me down. I had hopes for y'all, and y'all pissed me off. But they would have gone through the top 3 teams record-wise in the NBA during the regular season this year. And I feel like that would take a lot to research. Any of our fans out there, if y'all want to help us out, let me know. Has that ever happened before? Off the top of my head, I want to say no. I don't think that's ever happened where an NBA champion has knocked off the top 3 teams record-wise from the regular season.
I wouldn't know. So yeah, if y'all are listening, and y'all wanna send that to us, hit us up on Facebook. You can find us at the JWJ Podcast. You know, one more thing I want to say about my pick with Denver. I think a championship has been the one thing that they just haven't been able to ever get. I mean, it's not like they've ever been like super close to one, but
Right.
Denver's always been that team that has been exciting. They've had their down years and things like that, but when they're good, they're always some team that's always like you've heard about something crazy. Like they have the highest scoring game in NBA history. 186, 184, or whatever it was against Detroit way back in the day. Like Denver's always been that fun team and kind of that, you know, statistical, like, wow, that's crazy. But yet they've the closest they got was 2009.
I gotta throw this out there, man. I just look, you mentioned the high scoring and the entertainment and everything. I cannot believe I was about to let this podcast end without saying congratulations to my dude, Carmelo Cayenne Anthony, on one hell of a career. Melo decided to hang it up for good the other day. And listen, one of my all-time favorites. Super happy, super privileged to get to watch you play. One of my all-time favorite collegiate players that I have ever gotten to see dribble that ball. Shout out to you. Go ahead and wait on that Hall of Fame nomination because it's definitely coming. Shout out to Carmelo Anthony.
One of the greatest scorers we've ever seen. One of the best players in that draft class with LeBron, with D Wade, with all those guys. Like Carmelo didn't have the opportunity to get, you know, as far as those guys, but he did play on some good teams. And the point I was about to make is, you know, that 2009 team is I think to me one of the greatest teams to never win an NBA title. They were so stacked.
One of the best conference final series I have ever watched in my life.
Right. And that was, you know, he just missed it. And I mean, even in New York, he had some good teams, but like
Melo was giving Kobe fits.
Like, and that 09 team,
never seen it
so stacked. It's one of the best teams to never win.
Never seen a nicer jab step in my life.
The jab, you know, 18 to 20 footer is money. Death, taxes, and Melo hitting the face up jab step with the pull up J. Like that's everybody talks about iconic shots. That's an iconic shot.
Carmelo Anthony and Rip Hamilton are the two guys that made me fall in love with the elbow jumper. Like,
Yeah.
Shout out to Melo, man.
Right. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, like I said, if you've made it this far, thank you again for making JWJ a part of your day. If you're not already, make sure you follow us, like, and subscribe. We can be found on almost every podcast platform. We're on Anchor, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and more. We can also be found on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, even though we've been thinking about getting rid of that for a while now. So Instagram, Facebook, for sure. You can find us at the JWJ Podcast. You can also follow us individually. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at It's a Thomas Thing, and you can find James at Titletown's Mayor. If you have any questions or would like to be a part of this podcast, add your 2 cents, you can send us an email at the JWJ Podcast at gmail.com for the chance to be included in a future episode. I said Denver in 6. James says Miami in 6. We're going to find out who wins game 1. Y'all tune in tonight, ABC, 8:30 p.m. Thank you guys again. And thank you for listening to JWJ.